DNVR Broncos live here on a Tuesday. Monday went by fast.
Yeah.
Excited to dive in. And it's Marvin Mims Day.
Yeah. Where are we?
I have no idea where we are.
Wow,
What?
he did drop
Oh
it.
my goodness. No.
Wow. Henry was ready to pounce on you, Ryan.
I was excited.
Nope.
I found dictionary.com. Like, they'll just say, like, how many letters you want the word to be? What letter do you want it to start with? I liked armament.
Oh.
Marvin Mims coming in.
Wow.
Because they're arming
Armament?
up. Yes. I guess you could just say
Wow.
Arms.
That just didn't
Arms
happen to be
race.
7 letters. Yeah.
So
Yep.
Henry apparently hated the bit so much that he now loves it.
No, I love it. We just got to get back to where we were.
I don't know what bit you're talking about.
Wow.
Oh, man,
Wow.
Henry, you really
Ooh.
hurt Ryan's feelings yesterday.
What if the A stands for audience and we ask the people if they want more A words?
They would just have to figure out a way to host the show.
Wow. Wow. I wonder what Ayrshire is.
I don't know.
No
Sounds like
idea.
The place in Lord of the Rings.
It is capitalized.
Wow.
Or
Ooh, Awakened, because it's another morning podcast.
Yep, I'm almost there.
Yeah. I had like a weird, I woke up at like 2:30 last night. And
That's when I went to bed.
I was going to say.
yeah, I believe it. And then I felt like it was like 7. But my phone was like on the other side of the room, so I was like, "Oh, well, it's almost time to like get going with my day."
That's
Go
the
and look, and I was
best.
like, "Oh shit!" And so then I was like, "This isn't gonna end well. Like, what am I gonna do?" And so I was like, "Well, let's just start getting work done for tomorrow." So I went through, was like, I'm doing like the 5 things to know about JL Skinner. So I
At
just
2:30?
yeah, I went back to bed at like 5:30. But that's when I was like going through and watching like old Marvin Mims games and stuff. But I woke up for real about 25 minutes ago, so. It's kind of it's a weird time for me.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I
The audacity, as some would say.
I went home. I watched I was here for the Nuggets game.
Yep.
Dropped Henry off. He lives really
Yep.
close to me now. It's
Yes.
real cute.
It is cute.
And then I watched the PHNX Suns post game. And then I watched the DNVR Nuggets post
Man,
game.
which one was more enjoyable?
Uh,
How sick of a person are you?
honestly, DNVR because PHNX was like kind of, you know, when the Broncos lose and we are just like, well, fuck.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of apathy?
Yeah, like they weren't
Really?
like mad or anything.
Oh, that is the worst as the opposing fan
Yeah.
tuning in. So what's their take on it? Is the series over?
They are not confident, that's for sure.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, they have to win
They
4
were
of the
saying
next
things
5.
like this could be Chris Paul's last game in a Suns uniform.
Wow.
Oh, I love it.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Do they
It
realize?
was honestly a good show though. That, you know, like the ALLCITY head of content in me was like, oh, this is well done stuff.
They're significant favorites in Game 3.
Are they?
I think when I saw right after the game, 6-point favorites,
I
and that's
believe it.
without knowing Chris Paul's status, right? Like we don't know his status.
I forgot to bet on game 1, and so you know me. Now I can't bet on the games.
Oh, wow. So if they lose, I'll touch wood. But if they lose on Friday,
Then
can you bet?
Yeah, I can get back in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
When they were down by like 8 or whatever, I was like, what? We all know what's going to happen. Like, there's one team that's way better than the other. And I hadn't bet in a while. Like, it'd just been like a few days before I went through the whole process of all that stuff. So I was like, let's just throw the account on it and we'll just take it all out if it works. Plus 140.
Dang.
Felt pretty good.
When was it plus 140?
I think down 8.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. I was sitting at the same table as you. You didn't even say anything. I love a quiet, irresponsible.
I mean, it was
bet.
kind of a degenerate bet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So, Nugs up 2-0.
Yep.
Let's go.
Yep.
Late night.
Feeling good.
Marvin Mims. So the way we're gonna do this is each day from here until we finish or something weird happens. We are going to give each of these guys a day to dive in and really talk about them. Obviously, during the draft, things are crazy. Pieces are moving. The 3 of us weren't all together. So let's dive into some Marvin Mims, who I have only grown to love more and more over time.
I completely agree. And everyone that's been a fan of Marvin Mims' teams has absolutely loved him because he is the definition of production.
Yep.
And Ryan would hate this, but you look in the dictionary of production and Marvin Mims' name shows up right there.
Wow.
A word
yeah.
for production?
Well, no, it wasn't because it wasn't the A, actually. It was Ryan hates when people say the definition of this is this, and it's not actually the definition of it. What's the one
that
At
is
least
annoying.
that one was like actually no one would think that.
Right.
The one is the definition of insanity.
Right,
is doing
right,
the same
right.
thing over and over again and expecting different results.
Okay, so you didn't hate it. I like it.
No, that was fine,
But productive as can be. In high school, he set the record for receiving yards in a career in high school with 5,400 in the state of Texas, by the way,
Yep.
which is like as good of football as you can find
best.
out there.
Mr. Texas football. That means
Mr.
something.
Texas football, and then one of the reasons why he
Then
was
he went to
Mr. Texas
Oklahoma.
football was he became he set the single season record for receiving yards, 117 catches in 1 year, 2,600 yards and over 30 touchdowns. That is insane.
What's insane to me is that many catches at that high of a clip per catch.
Right,
Because
right.
you hear 117
Yeah.
catches, you're like, well, that's not that much. And then you hear 2,600 yards, you're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
he's averaging 20-something yards per catch on 117 attempts.
And I believe Nick Kosmider told me this stat that Marvin Mims, his senior year of high school, half of the games he played in, the very first play of the game was a 75-yard touchdown to Marvin Mims.
That's pretty
How
crazy.
about that? What a way
That's
to start
insane because that means every week the opposing coach
Yep.
told them,
Yep.
look,
Yep.
they're going to Mims deep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
And
mean,
they couldn't stop it.
Yeah.
Shout out to Nick Kosmider again. He was on with the guys on Altitude yesterday. And another thing he was saying was that, so state championship game, it's Marvin Mims' team versus Drew Sanders' team. And so he's just like talking to the coaches on both sides. He's talking like Drew Sanders, defensive coordinator, about Drew, but also like, what was that like? And he was like, oh, we put together a crazy game plan. Like we held him to like 140 yards on 10 catches with a couple touchdowns. By far his worst game of the season.
They were thrilled.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Also, those like 2,600 yards, that's a national record
Yep.
for
Yeah.
high school football.
So he
Nobody's
has
ever
the
done that
season
before.
record, the all-time record.
Yep. Insane.
Pretty
and
good.
then what does he do? He goes to the University of Oklahoma.
Which you kind of have to have a little bit of dog in you to be Mr. Texas football and then go to Oklahoma.
It's
You kinda
it's
do.
such a good
There's
point.
something about
Yeah.
you where you're like, I kind of want to be a villain.
The career record that he broke, that was Jordan Shipley,
Yep.
who is like
Mr.
also
Texas.
Mr. Texas
Yep.
receiver guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. That's such a good point. And this wasn't Oklahoma right now. This was Oklahoma when they had, why can't I think of his name? Head coach.
Lincoln Riley.
Lincoln Riley, the offensive guy in college football. This is when Oklahoma was always top 25. I'm sure they'll get back there. But I mean, this was when they were powerhouse as a team, specifically on the offensive side. So he went to one of the schools to be like a stud receiver for. And what did he do? He just continued to produce. He led the team in receiving his freshman year. I believe every single year he was there. He led the team in receiving, include this past year when he went off again.
Yep. And so it puts up over 1,000 last year. The 2 years before that, I mean, the first one was Caleb Williams comes in and takes over for Spencer Rattler. Like he kind of wins that job out.
Yep.
The next year is just the Caleb Williams Oklahoma season. And then this year, Caleb Williams leaves. And actually, one of the things Marvin Mims has said is that he was going to transfer if Lincoln Riley stayed. Like he thought he was misused. He thought the ball should be thrown to him more, like all this sort of stuff. But then when Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams left, he was like, oh yeah, I'll stick around. And then has a career year just leading that offense.
Crazy. With Dylan Gabriel and another
Yes.
like not great quarterbacks.
Not great
Right.
quarterbacks at all.
Right.
Also, real quick, and this is way off topic, Sham's tweet, the Memphis Grizzlies have informed pending free agent Dylan Brooks that he will not be brought back under any circumstances.
Oh my God.
Just love that. Just
Damn, they
love
really
it.
think that he
Yep.
lost them the series.
They do.
How idiotic was that of him, though? Come on.
We're always on different pages on this stuff.
You think that was smart?
I mean,
of course you do. You thought Burrowhead was a good idea.
yeah, I did.
Like,
This one,
there's- yeah.
this one was definitely dumber than that.
Okay.
But if LeBron needs motivation, he doesn't need it.
No, but there's just a couple of those guys that like you don't poke Michael Jordan.
right,
you don't
right,
poke
right, yeah.
Let me
LeBron
just be
James.
really
Like
clear.
there's a line right there at the top.
Kobe.
Yeah, exactly.
I hate Dylan Brooks, so I'm definitely
yeah.
not taking his side on this. But yeah, hey, Shanghai Sharks need a wing.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
Oh man, that is just that is wild phrasing.
Under any circumstances.
I know that's why I had to
pay
say
us to play. That is absolutely wild. And so, what does Marvin Mims, besides production, bring to the Broncos? There have been some comparisons out there. I think NFL Network put it out there. Emmanuel Sanders comparison. And sometimes these comparisons are absolutely nuts. Sometimes it's guys you've never heard of. Sometimes it's the greatest quarterback ever that a rookie's being compared to. And it's like, okay, come on, these are ridiculous. When you watch the film, man, do I see Emmanuel Sanders in his game because
Brandon Cooks too.
Who?
Brandon Cooks
Yes,
is another
yeah,
guy
yeah.
he's drawn comparisons to. Very similar.
And
Both Sean Payton guys.
That's a very good point. And I think one of the reasons why I see it so much is not just a similar size, but Marvin Mims is a smaller guy, but he's not just a burner. And in fact, that's not his pure game, just being a burner. He ran a 4.38, which is really fast, but that's not like one trick pony fast. Like that's all you do is run fast. He works all angles of the field I'm talking from the slot, from outside, but also short, intermediate, and deep. And that's kind of the Emmanuel Sanders. And when I watch him, that's what I see. Ryan, I'm sure you're going to talk about this, but good luck in man coverage when you're trying to guard Marvin Mims and, just so shifty and really good at all over the field.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add about his college career, because we led up to it a little bit, which is Texas kid goes to Oklahoma. Then in his senior season, makes the game-winning insane catch against Texas.
Yeah.
Which was like basically like a two-handed version of OBJ's insane catch.
It's ridiculous.
Yep.
I mean, and that was the one that was one of the games I went back and watched last night because they were down like 30 points. Did it get that bad?
It was big.
I think it
big.
was that bad, and came back.
Yep.
Marvin Mims was a big piece of that.
So I said this on the draft show, but I'll say it again here. I went home after the second, third rounds. I was like, who am I going to watch? Decided to watch Marvin Mims. And I was just sitting there thinking, like, man, no one can guard this guy in man. And one of the things I really love to look for in wide receivers is, does their quarterback look for them on third down? When they're going to bring pressure and they're going to get in your face, who is the quarterback looking at? And they're always looking for Marvin Mims, which to me is like, if I was scouting a wide receivers for an NFL team to take in the top 2 rounds, that would be number one. Like, is the quarterback looking their way on most third downs? And that checked the box for Marvin Mims. And so then I'm just like watching this over and over again. He's just smoking, man, every single time. And then I found this tweet, like, randomly just came across my timeline 14 hours later or something, from Marcus Mosier, who said Oklahoma Marvin Mims feels like the most slept on receiver in the class. This was from March. But one of the bullet points, and I'll read all of them, but the one that's relevant here is 99.9 PFF grade versus single coverage. I've never seen a 99.9 PFF grade for anything.
No,
Yeah, that's insane.
it is insane.
Like, the tape showed exactly what they saw, which
Right.
is you just can't cover him.
Yep.
And obviously, going to take a leap from Big 12 corners to NFL corners, but beating man coverage at that rate is a skill.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not just, oh, you're big and strong and fast. Like, you are running sharp routes. You know all the little tricks and intricacies to get yourself open. But a couple other things that were on here. Obviously, we know the 4.38 speed. We know he had a high RAS. You were going to have to help me out with this. 96th percentile breakout age. Does that mean, like, he produced younger than most people do?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, because the idea must be like, you have all these like 25-year-olds now. It's like, oh, now you're good when you're 25.
Right,
Like,
right.
You might be going up against 19-year-olds half the time.
Right.
So that seems good.
Sure. Yeah.
96th percentile average depth of target. Great.
Yep.
91st percentile burst score.
Love it.
Got to
Believe
be
it.
just
Eats
explosion.
up space.
Off
Yep.
the- yeah.
Explosion off the line. And then finally, we talked about the crazy production in high school and how he did that many catches at 20+ yards per catch.
Yeah.
He still had 20 yards per reception in college.
Insane. Absolutely insane. For over 3 years.
Yeah. And a lot of catches.
Yep.
And so, I mean, obviously what he's really good at, the reason you go after him is because he's a deep threat. You know, he goes up the field, the posts, all that sort of stuff. Like, he's one of the best in the draft, if not the best in the draft at that. I know other people, like, I know you like him in the slot. Dre's talked a lot about the slot. Everybody seems to talk about the slot. I feel like I haven't seen enough. Like, I don't feel like I've seen a lot of just, like, short little routes in there. And that could be, like, I went back and watched the Texas Tech game and the Texas game, and there was one from the year before. I forget what it was. And maybe that's on me for just not seeing it yet. But I do wonder, just because there is, like, he said it himself. He said his pro day, like, Oklahoma runs weird routes for their receivers. Like, they don't have the traditional route tree. And that's something that he said during the offseason. He, like, was working with his receiver coach with, and specifically threw in, like, a route tree drill into his pro day to show, like, hey, I can do this stuff too.
Yeah.
And I didn't go back and watch that, and that's, again, on me. So maybe he has kind of proven some of these things. But again, you look at the 20 yards per catch. Those are the numbers of somebody who goes deep downfield. And so when I look at him, you run the go, you run the post. There's a couple great little hole shots where he's, like, getting up the sideline, kind of stopping, grabbing the ball out of bounds, and the gap in the cover two on the sideline. And then there's a couple hitches as well. But it's, first of all, you just need to make that work. You need to get deep, threaten deep, and then you need to just have some counter so that you're not just going one-on-one with a corner who gets to start 12 yards behind you, because then he will take it away. And I think he has that. Just showing, if he does wind up producing from the slot and can get, like, those quick little things going underneath, that's when this becomes like a first-round pick. Like, why can't he be Jerry Jeudy at that point?
Right, and I think a big thing too with him that will allow him to not just be a one-trick pony is he's great when the ball is in his hands, and I think that's another reason why he was able to average 20 yards per catch is because when he was catching the ball short, he was able to take a 7-yard pass 18 yards and have 10 yards after the catch, and that's another thing that kind of gives me that Emmanuel Sanders comp. Great with the ball in his hands. When he catches the ball, the play isn't over.
Yep.
So there's one concern.
Uh-oh.
Sadly.
Uh-oh.
And it's a big difference between him and Emmanuel Sanders. And it's a huge fear for me because of the fan base that we're dealing with.
I know where you're going.
And it's drops.
Yeah.
Honestly, maybe the one thing that truly stopped him from being a first-round pick is just the elite hands. He does not have them.
In some ways he does, though.
But
like, he just has the drops.
He has great ball skills. Like, he goes up and fights for balls and makes spectacular catches. But he is liable to drop an easy one now and then. More than you would like to see. And the thing is, if it happens 3 times in his rookie year, everyone's just going to label him a drops guy.
Why do you say that? Maybe because Jerry Jeudy had that exact same thing?
Yeah, and Jerry, I think, had like 10 as a rookie.
Obviously one terrible game with
but
5.
we're still talking about it.
Yep.
In fact, it hasn't been an issue for him ever since.
Yeah, and in fact, you're absolutely right. His rookie year was awful. I mean, he led the league in drops, one terrible game. But then credit to Jerry, he has really improved from that. But even yesterday, when the Broncos picked up his 5th-year option, I saw multiple videos on Twitter circulating around. A couple from Chargers fans. Yeah, exactly, saying this is the guy that just picked up Jerry Jeudy's, and it was a low light clip of drops. And I also saw a couple of Broncos fans saying the same thing. And it's like, man, but you're right. The initial impression, right? That's kind of life, and then it trickles into football. That's just something that you're going to have to live with. And we do have people in the comment section saying, you guys are saying great things about this guy. Obviously, production's off the charts. The talent's there. Why did he fall to the end of the 2nd round? That's a big one.
Yep. And size.
Yeah, I was going to say. And another one is the size. Emmanuel Sanders wasn't a first-round pick. And typically, I'm trying to think of guys that go high in the first round. Typically, it's not the small guys. Obviously,
If you are, that means you're like a 4-3-1.
Yeah.
And,
Again, that's why KJ Hamler was a second rounder.
Yep.
And Henry Ruggs, a first round pick. He was a 4.2
something.
something.
He wasn't
exactly.
too small even. Like he might have been 6 foot.
Yeah, I don't think so. But I mean, you have to be elite with that speed if you want to go in the first round. And Marvin Mims wasn't. But still, being a second round receiver still means you're really good.
Right.
Really good.
And when you're drafting in the first round, you're drafting for dominance.
Right.
And even Emmanuel Sanders, who was a great NFL player, would not be considered a dominant receiver.
Yeah, a top 5, top 10 guy.
If you get Emmanuel Sanders, if you get Brandon Cooks out of this, you are ecstatic.
You are ecstatic. And one of the things that Sean Payton and George Payton talked about when they were talking about Marvin Mims first, Sean Payton just had an amazing quote about it. He said, when we were watching all the wide receivers, most of the wide receivers looked like they were stuck in Monday through Friday rush hour traffic. But Marvin Mims, it looked like he was just flying down on a Saturday or Sunday with no one around. And he said that's because of his speed. And when you watch the film, now, it is a lot more spread out at Oklahoma, so that kind of does help with the lanes and stuff. But it's right. It's so I love that analogy.
Yeah, and like it was such a great analogy because once you heard it, you saw it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You watch his film, and even his cuts, they're not aggressive,
Like sharp.
but they're effective.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a Ferrari, you know, driving down the PCH, changing lanes. Like it's just, you know, and like there's not like this hard step.
Right,
It's just
right.
he quickly changes direction. Now he's going the other way.
Right.
So I thought that was such a great analogy, and it's kind of feels like a weapon for him.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have to set up his cut. You know, Jerry Jeudy obviously has the most like nasty, violent cuts that are also a weapon for him. But
They're different though.
he kind of like shudders, you know, and like with Mims, it's just like.
Yep. 100%. And another thing, you could they didn't flat out say this, but you could tell that Sean and George were admitting that Marvin Mims was the top of their second tier of receivers, and that's why he went late second instead of early first or mid first. Yeah, who went in the first? It was Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yep.
It was Quentin John.
Did Quentin Johnson go in the first?
He did.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
And then I think there was one more.
Jordan Addison, the Vikings.
Yep, Jordan Addison. So those were kind of the top guys from my understanding from what George and Sean were saying, and obviously their draft position. But then they had Marvin Mims right up there as the top of their second tier.
And the big reason I think he's second tier is, again, just things from 12 yards and closer. Because so much of what he did, I mean, it's the Oklahoma offense. You can't blame him. It just run and run. Just run. Like you go deep, you break right, you break left, you break wherever you break. But even when you break, you're getting deeper. And that's just what they want to do, is just have these big swooping deep routes and see if they can pull guys out of coverage. And if he does just provide a little bit more, then all of a sudden you are looking at Emmanuel Sanders. Worst, I don't know. It's tough to say worst case scenario with a rookie, but, you know, there's a chance that he turns out to be like a Will Fuller, a guy who, you know, what does he do? He runs deep, and so what does the defense do? They sit on top of him. And that means you can kind of just take him out of the game, but in doing so, you're opening up so much space underneath that's the point of him.
And Sean Payton is a master at utilizing that space.
Definitely. But you're not spending a first-round pick on somebody to do that. You know, you can find somebody to do that. And so I think that it's probably unfair to call that his floor. Like, the floor is lower than that for anybody, but that is kind of concern, is that he is just that kind of guy, and he doesn't come up with the counters and those sorts of things to get the ball underneath. Again, I'm not too worried about that, but that is why he isn't with that first tier. And in terms of the drops, so average drop rate for this draft class of receivers was 6.7%. He was at 6.9%, which is, I mean, you don't like to be higher than average, but you also, I mean, you brought up the average depth of target before. Balls 20 yards from the line of scrimmage are a lot tougher to catch than the ones 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. So a couple more drops aren't the end of the world. And then you just look at the drop rates for the Broncos last year. Jerry Jeudy, 8.1%. Dulcich, 8.3%. Courtland Sutton, 8.6%. Montreal Washington, 20%.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's It's not out of the line.
Did they count it as a
else.
drop when he got mossed by Courtland Sutton?
They should have.
Counted as an interception for Russ. All right, guys, let's hand out grades for this pick and Marvin Mims. First, I'm getting an A to Pins and Aces because the best stuff out there. Honestly, you put the shirts on, you never want to take them off. And these are more than just golf shirts. I know that's what Pins and Aces is about, but you just want to wear the most comfortable polo lounging around the house. Boom. You want to wear it going out to dinner. There you go. And they have so many different types of designs, which is really, really cool. And you got to check them out. We've all got Pins and Aces. And it's honestly just the best out there. I have to imagine it's the best for golfing just with how much stretch it has.
Oh,
too.
yeah. Oh, yeah. When there's like certain golf polos you put on, and like by the third hole, you're like, I don't remember this being so tight on my left arm, and you're like getting all uncomfortable. With these, man, you put that thing on, you're like, feels like birdies today.
Oh, I love it. And they are the official golf apparel partner, not just of DNVR, but ALLCITY as well. And they're going to give you 15% off when using the code DNVR over at pinsandaces.com. So check them out. Pins and Aces, use that promo code DNVR. And not only 15% off, but you get free shipping. So check them out, pinsandaces.com.
And also Shady Rays. I usually take mine off and leave them in the car just because, I don't know. I'm actually really good at not losing things.
That's actually surprising.
Yeah, I thought that would be surprising. That's why I thought I was willing to say it. Like, people lose like their AirPods or like I've never left my wallet somewhere before. Like, that just seems crazy to me.
Henry, you may want to touch on wood because the last time we kind of had someone on this show saying something, it was Ryan saying how good of a bowler he was and he couldn't even get to 100. I'm afraid you're not going to show up with those glasses tomorrow. I feel like you're gonna
I'm going to
lose
show
them.
up. Well, they'll probably be in my car. But see, that's why. Because you never lose them. And when do I need them? When I'm driving somewhere. It's rare. Well, I guess we don't need to think of all the situations I wear my sunglasses at the moment, but if you are unlike me and you do lose things because you're irresponsible unlike me, then Shady Rays are definitely for you because you'll get a free pair. Because if you lose them or break them, they will send you a new pair with no questions asked. Or if you just don't like them, you've got 30 days to send them back and exchange them or get a refund or whatever. Seems unlikely because they're great sunglasses. It's an independent sunglass company, world-class product. They're just as good as any expensive pair that I've worn. Durable frames. That's why they're willing to put like the lost and broken policy out there. And if you order and use the code DNVR, you can get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself shades that are rated 5 stars, with over 250,000 people go to Shady Rays.
All I got to say is that even Tiger Woods misses the cut sometimes.
Wow. Okay, fair. That means you better be pretty damn good after.
Yeah, I'll be back. Don't you worry.
Good warm-up round? That was a good warm-up day?
Yep.
Okay, fair. If you haven't bowled in a while, I'll give you a break.
Yeah, exactly.
One break.
Especially
now that you're comparing yourself to Tiger Woods.
Oh, boy.
I did see a highlight
surprised.
yesterday that came out of back when he was called Deion Sanders. Coming back to the Reds and playing his first game for them in 3 years. And he went 3 for 3
Oh my gosh.
with a line drive up the middle, a home run, and a bunt single.
Oh my gosh, that is insane. Wait, what was his first hit?
Line drive.
A line drive. So he literally did it all.
Yeah,
he did do it
Yeah,
all.
his next one just like smoked a home run.
Oh my gosh, that is insane. Is this Marvin Mims pick insane, either in a good way or a bad way? Let's dish out grades. And I have to ask, are we doing this via like grading the pick or grading the player? Because there's could be a slight difference.
I think
I would
pick.
say grade. Oh.
You were going to say player?
All right, let's grade the pick. Let's grade the pick.
Okay.
Let's grade the pick.
I mentioned this on the Saturday show, sorry. But we sat here right after the pre-draft press conference and talked about everything they said. And one of the things you said is like, they're really committed to best player available.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, I'll believe that if they draft a wide receiver with their first selection.
Yep.
There
And
you
then
go.
they traded up for it too.
And-
even a little more.
And they stayed by BPA the whole way.
Yeah.
Maybe even until the last pick of the 7th round. That one might have just potentially lined up with a need as well.
Sure.
But that was impressive. Just in general, I thought they did a great job of just adding talent to a roster that is bereft of it.
And typically, especially when you're talking about a team that needs talent just anywhere, typically in the long haul, that's the best way to build your team. And sometimes you're going to scratch your head and be like, is Marvin Mims or player X going to see the field their rookie year? But then if you do stick with that, it typically works out in the long run.
And I can't remember who pointed it out, but someone said, like, yeah, your need right now might not be wide receiver, but next year you kind of need to cut one of those wide receivers. So then it's a need all of a sudden.
Right.
Or even if you don't need to, it'd be really nice to have another $10 million to spend somewhere else.
Right.
It's very true. And we're going to dive into just how this fits in. But let's give this grade first. So grading the pick, not just the player. Henry?
I'll give it a B. B minus was kind of tempting just because, I don't know. Again, I grade off like a C plus is like an average. And so I think that they're definitely better than average, but how much better? I think you factor in that most of the time when a team makes a pick, you think, kind of a reach. And that's just the nature of the way the draft board goes. You can, starting at the top, you can only draft worse than the number one. And I don't know. We don't need to get into all those numbers, I guess. But basically, it's a good player. I think that getting him at pick 64 is a really good value. I think that like a neutral value is probably like 40, 45, probably 40-ish. So it's a good value at the pick. It's not a need, though. And I get that maybe it's unfair to hold that against him when best player available is the best strategy. But in terms of how you help this football team the most, I don't think that it's a receiver. And so for that reason, I've got to knock him down a little bit. Otherwise, this could be like an A minus, maybe even an A. So B for me.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you a lot there, Henry. I'm going to go B plus here. This is an A player, especially where you got him. So taking the value in there, definitely an A player. But like you said, it just a little bit head scratching just with where this receiver room is. There was reports that the Broncos were getting calls for Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton after the Broncos made this pick. If they would have honestly traded Courtland Sutton, and then it's like, okay, here's a clear role for Marvin Mims. The room's opened up now. Then this would be in the A's and A minus for me. But just with that, which we're going to talk about, just it's a very crowded receiver room right now. For this year, I'm just wondering his fit. But like you said, Ryan, you do have to project into the future as well. But you still want to see your second round pick who you traded up for have a role this year. I think he's going to, but it's just not as clear cut as I would like. So I'm going B plus.
I completely disagree with your guys' criticism of the pick in terms of it being a crowded wide receiver room. I really don't think it is all that crowded. He is automatically your fourth wide receiver with little to no resistance. And
I agree with that. That's crowded, though.
But I'm saying he can only go up from there. So he walks in, he fills a need for you, which actually was wide receiver 4, if nothing else happens. But I think he has the ability to go in and start taking wide receiver 3 and maybe even wide receiver 2 reps, depending on the set that they want to go out in. The other thing is that Sean Payton loves to mix up his personnel groups, and he loves to throw a bunch of different stuff at a defense. So 1 second you're matching up against Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick, and then you blink, and all of a sudden you're matching up against Jerry Jeudy and Marvin Mims. So I think he plays like, I bet you his usage is closer to a wide receiver 3 this year. And there is a chance that week 7, week 8, Courtland Sutton is shipped out. And he vaults right into it. So I'm not all that worried about the crowded wide receiver room because I also got the feeling that Sean Payton doesn't love any of these guys, save for maybe Tim Patrick, because he's the only one whose name we haven't heard mentioned being on the trade block. He clearly loves Marvin Mims, which fires me up. Give me an A minus.
There we go. I love it. And so let's now talk about where he does fit in. Because my issue isn't that he's not going to play. Ryan, I agree. I think he's going to be, I think he's going to average out as wide receiver 3 in terms of reps and productivity for the Broncos. So I don't have an issue with that. What I have an issue with is if he's wide receiver 3, that means a $10 to $15 million wide receiver is now wide receiver 4 for your team. And maybe it's just for 1 year and it's not ideal and they move on in the future. I don't think all 4 of these guys are on the team next year. I think between Tim Patrick and Courtland Sutton, one of those guys is gone unless I guess the Broncos are blown away by a first-round pick for Jerry Jeudy, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be Tim Patrick or Courtland Sutton that's gone. But that's just why I don't like this for this year is what a waste of money to have $10 to $15 million in cap space as your 4th receiver.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just a position you got to spend at when you have the passing game the Broncos had last year. And I know it's not new money, so it feels different.
Yeah, I disagree.
But that's just, I mean, you gave Tim Patrick and Courtland Sutton those contracts a couple years ago, so you are where you are. Like that, and I don't even think that giving them those maybe giving both of them those contracts was a mistake because you're winding up with pretty average receivers that like.
That was the thing we talked about back then.
Yeah.
Because, the fun tweet was like, the Broncos got Tim Patrick and Courtland Sutton for the price of 1 Tyreek Hill.
It's like, one Tyreek Hill would be pretty sick.
Yeah. That's not good.
No, it's not. And so that's
true.
That was kind of the mistake then is bringing both back. I don't know. At the time, I didn't hate it, though. It's like I can't fault them too much for doing what I would have done.
No, and I liked it back then, too. Even to say, we were like joking about the 2-for-1 deal. It was like, yeah, that's not really how it works. You'd just rather have the elite player.
Yep.
But at the same time, it was like, this is a good deal for each of these guys. It's 15 for Tim, or 15 for Court, 10 for Tim.
Yep.
And it was like, wow, you got these guys at below market value.
Yep.
And at the time, they were balling. And Courtland obviously had his, blow up year and all that. Mm-hmm. He hadn't quite proved that he had come back from that injury yet. But I definitely don't go back and say they made the wrong decision there. It's just you need more production. Tim missed the whole year last year, which sucks. But now I think you have a really formidable wide receiver room. You have a more formidable offensive line. You might actually, and you have a genius scheming up the passes.
Exactly.
You might actually have a good passing game this year.
Exactly.
Might.
I like that caveat. But remember, this is a run-first team. Now, maybe not truly run-first, but the way Sean Payton's talked about this, well, in terms of the rest of the NFL. Or you think Sean's changing his mind?
Yeah, I think it might be a smokescreen.
See, I don't think it's because of Russell Wilson right now. I don't think he trusts him at all, and that's the center of the passing game.
Maybe they had some workouts, and he's like, no, this guy can actually sling it.
Well, the Broncos haven't done any on-field stuff, and you see other teams doing that.
He was in the back of the steakhouse with Joe Montana.
You mean Sean and Joe were throwing the ball around?
Like, I'm open.
Just on the side. No, Russ, hike it to me.
But seriously, I'm starting to wonder if that's really what their identity is going to be. I don't think we're seeing 17 Samaje Perine carries a game.
Could there be another move there at running back?
How about this? Speaking of moves, the Broncos have made 2 moves today. Very low profile move.
Yep.
But the Broncos invited, Jacques Patrick to minicamp. Now, again, low profile move, but second in the XFL in rushing yards and number 1 in the XFL in receiving yards by a running back.
Yep. How about that? Dynamic, the most dynamic running back in the XFL.
And Sean Payton clearly likes the XFL because they also brought in XFL sack leader Trent Harris.
Yep. I mean, why not? Especially, you're not signing these guys contracts. You're giving them rookie minicamp tryouts.
By the way,
exactly.
Jacques Patrick, 6'2", 236.
Big boy.
That's a big boy.
Man, and speaking of running backs, especially big ones, Latavius Murray will not be back with the Broncos as he signed with the Bills yesterday. So that kind of safety net for the Broncos of, well, if we don't draft one, if we don't trade for Dalvin Cook or Austin Eckler, these big-time splash moves, well, just fall back on Latavius. That's no longer there. We didn't really think that was going to be the plan when Samaje Perine was picked up, but now they can't fall back on that.
Thanks for Sean Payton, Latavius, I guess.
Yeah, seriously, man, that's tough. You can't even get a couple million out of it.
World.
It is a cold world.
So if Dalvin Cook comes in, obviously I'll go back to saying, okay, now I see what they're doing here. But they're not giving 20 carries a game to Samaje Perine and someone else.
Again, like the Sean Payton offense, though, is you take what the defense gives you. Now, the baseline of that is you need to have evaluations on like what's a win, but you start with saying like, okay, we're out there in 22. We got Burton and whoever else at running back, and we've got Manhurts and Troutman blocking. So if they're just going to go 3-4, do we think we can just run on that? Or do they need to go heavier than that? Yeah. And if they come out and just play 3-4 against that, there's a good chance they say, oh, we can run on that all day. And then they say, well, what happens if we swap the tight ends with Dulcich and Alberto? It's like, do they stick in the 3-4? Do they go to nickel because those guys can't block? And so then you pick those matchups. And then you say, well, what if you throw in a receiver on this side and do this? So when do you get him to nickel? When do you get him to dime? When do you get him in base? And then how do you feel like you match up against that? And the first quarter of every game is just, what are our options? Because they're going to play these things the exact same thing until they adjust because we're beating them with it.
Yep.
And if they really think that offensive line is good, that obviously like skews things a little bit because they'll feel like the run is a better option in whatever situations. But all that's to say, I don't think they have a strong feeling. Like I think they probably know, hey, Jerry's a pretty good player. We think we've got 2 or 3 good offensive linemen. We think we've got, I don't know, Marvin Mims. They must really like to be trading up to draft. But I don't know. I think that they just want to build everything up as much as they can and see where the pieces fall in training camp and then into the season.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I'm looking at these 4 wide receivers and saying they're going to throw it a lot.
Yeah.
Unless they change something at running back.
Bless you. And I think that they're going to make another move at running back. Not necessarily a big one, but they are going to make at least some other move. And guys, I think I'm at the point where not just it could happen, but just I think I would like to see a wide receiver moved in order for this to make sense, because Marvin Mims is dynamic. Marvin Mims is a guy that can come in and produce right away. He absolutely should be your third receiver, at least your third receiver now and for the future. And I don't want $10 million sitting on the bench or even more in Courtland Sutton. I don't think you're going to be able to trade Tim Patrick before the season. And maybe this is something where before the trade deadline, you make a move, and that would be okay for me. But man, it doesn't add up to have 10 or 15 million. So this is not something against Courtland Sutton as a player or Tim Patrick or something. It's just the dynamic of this team. You're keeping Jerry Jeudy. And you should. The Broncos just picked up his 5th-year option. You're obviously keeping Marvin Mims. And it's up to those other 2 guys. And I just think at some point that's probably the best route to go.
And I get what you're saying from a money perspective, but from a football perspective, I disagree. Like, I just think if they were to trade Courtland Sutton, I'd be saying, now you need a better number 4 than Marquez Callaway. And I know there's some people who think that you want him in that role, and I get that, but
Sean Payton thinks that. I think Sean Payton loves Marquez Callaway as a number 4.
Maybe, but then you're still saying, okay, we're relying on a rookie in our top 3. That's a really bold thing to do, especially a 21-year-old rookie, one who just turned 21. And then you have Jerry Jeudy, who is a number 1. Like, you feel good about that. And they have Tim Patrick coming off an injury. If you're trying to rebuild this team, I think that you might be kind of dooming this offense before you if you don't go get another receiver.
So the other thing, though, with that is, are you going to have all 4 of these guys on the roster in 2024?
No.
So then why aren't you trading them in week 7 when you can get a 6th-round pick? But you're not going to get a lot for them when then you're just cutting them. And when you cut them after this coming year, you don't get anything for them and you don't get comp picks for them.
So I think that if you do it around the trade deadline, then you've at least gotten a chance to see if all other pieces can hold up their end of the bargain.
Yep.
Tim Patrick is back and ready to go. If Jerry Jeudy's cooking like a number 1, and if Marvin Mims is a breakout rookie receiver, then you say, all right, we're good. If you do it now, I agree with Henry in the sense that you are rolling the dice on a few different areas and could put yourself in a bad position if, say, Tim Patrick isn't the same coming back.
Yep. And that's kind of where I'm at. And I think at the trade deadline, if you wind up saying, wow, we've got 4 good receivers, then go right ahead and move one of them. There's just so many things that can happen. And I just went back through these numbers again, any given week. And I think I got this number wrong last time. Last year, the Broncos' number 4 receiver going into the game played more than 16% of the offensive snaps, which isn't like a big role. Like, that's less than 1 in 5 snaps. But then you throw in, well, what if, say Jerry, Courtland, Tim, and Mims all miss 1 or 2 games. Well, then all of a sudden, that number 4 receiver turns out in those weeks to be Marquez Callaway, and you've got the bigger role for everybody else. And who gets what? I think that it gets even more split this year because that's just how Sean Payton does things. You don't have the every down players the same way that, last year the Broncos are kind of stuck having just because people were hurt. And then we touch wood, but Broncos have led the league in ACL tears in the last however many years. Big touch wood. Yeah. But again, like all of a sudden that happens in camp after you've moved Courtland Sutton and you're saying, wait, do we even have 3 NFL receivers on this team?
You are way underselling Marquez Callaway. I'm not going to try to sell him as a number 1, but he was the leading receiver for Sean Payton his second to last year.
But that's like saying Tim Patrick's 1,000-yard receiver, or Courtland Sutton is, Like that's just so long ago.
Yeah, but I'm not saying in this analogy, I'm not saying Courtland Sutton, I'm counting on him to be a 1,000-yard receiver. I'm saying he needs to be a 500-yard receiver. Marquez Callaway, I'm not saying he needs to be the number 1. He's not going to be counted on being the number 1. He's not going to be counted on being the number 2. He's not going to be counted on number 3. In this scenario, he would be your number 4. I think Sean Payton is more than comfortable with that. And I also think, let's just go back, Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy were not on the trade block, but being talked about in trade conversations. The Broncos were willing to move them for a steep price, but they were willing to move on from them. I don't think that's completely gone away. In fact, might have inched up a little more after getting Sean Payton, one of his guys, and Marvin Mims. Again, I don't think this is going to be Jerry Jeudy that's traded anymore. I think it's more so one of the other guys. And so I'm not pounding on the table that they have to do it, but to me now it makes sense, and I think this is something that, if I were to put odds on, does happen before the trade deadline. Maybe not before the start of the season, but the trade deadline, someone's moved.
It's a gamble. It's for sure.
I don't think it's that much of a gamble.
You're gambling on a lot, in my opinion. No one. You actually might even be able to make the case that Marquez Callaway is the most proven at the role you were asking them to do, being the 4th wide receiver. But no one else is proven in the role that they would be vaulted into.
What do you mean? Like Jerry?
We're not 100% sure on Jerry, wide receiver 1. I'm extremely confident in it. Not 100% sure. We're not 100% sure on Tim Patrick, wide receiver 2. We're definitely not 100% sure on Marvin Mims, wide receiver 3.
Yeah.
But so what I'm saying there is if you take Courtland out, you're not boosting any of those guys. Jerry's your 1 going into this season. Callaway, or not Callaway, Mims should be your 3. He's your 2nd round pick. You're not asking him to be your 1 or your 2. It's not crazy to ask him to be your 3.
You would like that to happen, but if it didn't happen in his rookie season because he was behind Jerry, Courtland, and Tim, no one's blaming him.
No, but I also don't think that you're boosting Tim up to being the number 2. Tim, I'm comfortable with him being the 2.
So am I. I'm just saying you're gambling. If you do this, you're gambling more on all 3 of those hitting. Right now, you kind of actually have a free card. If one of these guys isn't who you think they are, you still have 3 good wide receivers.
And you still have Marquez Callaway, who could wind up being good enough too.
Yep.
That's what I'm saying. I trust Marquez Callaway to be the 4.
Yeah, I mean, you just have it. I like having the insurance.
Yeah.
I wish it was insurance at $2 million. This is insurance at $10 to $15 million. Depending on which player you look at as being the insurance.
I'm just not too worried. Like, the money is just fine right now.
It's not fine for 2024. And if you move on from one of these guys, you do get to move the money into next year, and the cap can be manipulated. But when you look past this year, the Broncos are already going to be in cap trouble. So why not just help yourself out? And so that's what I'm saying.
But why not just have more good players for now?
Because is this the year that you're going all in on? No, it's not.
When are you ever going all in?
Hopefully, if they can get this turned around with Russell Wilson, hopefully it's next year. Hopefully it's in 2024, 2025. That's the window.
But what would change then that would make sense more than now?
What do you mean?
Like, to me,
it's a second year.
For the first half of the season, you want to have as many good players to give yourself as much of a chance of being a winning team.
As big of a ball of clay as you can get.
Yes. If you're, 3-5 at the deadline, now you start thinking about next year.
Yep.
No, because I'm thinking like going all in, and I'm not going all in if I'm the Broncos this year.
I mean, you should be all in on trying to have the best year you can have.
Sure, but I would rather. My thing is, I would rather have $10 million for the future than $10 million sitting on the bench as a fourth receiver.
And it'd be closer to 6, I think. That could be wrong.
We'll see. I think I think there's a world in which you want to start thinking about the future. I don't want to do that yet.
And just real quick, Marquez Callaway, Lil Jordan Humphrey, like both those guys, like I think they're very far from locks to make the roster. Like neither of them play special teams. You've got, I mean, Marquez Callaway last year played 14 games. Michael Thomas played 3 games and had more yards. Jarvis Landry played 9 games and had more.
That was not with Sean Payton. Look at Marquez Callaway with Sean Payton. And it was actually Sean Payton's last year with the Saints when Marquez Callaway led the team. And he had 700 receiving yards.
But that room was just torn apart by injuries. And he caught like 54% of his targets. Year before, he has 213 yards with 78%
Hank, I'm not
catches.
saying Marquez Callaway needs to be your 1, your 2, or your 3. I'm saying I trust him, and I think Sean Payton trusts him as your 4. I haven't even brought up Little Jordan Humphrey. I agree. I don't think he's a lock to make the team at all. I do think Marquez Callaway is a lock. You can write it in pen to make the team as your 5.
I think Kendall Hinton is right there, production wise, on the same footing.
Marquez Callaway is Sean Payton's guy.
The thing is, though, it's not about wide receiver 4. It's about 1, 2, and 3. And if all of those guys are gonna be what you think they can be, if not, then you have a 4th person in that mix where you only need 3 of them to hit.
Let's look at this though. Sean Payton doesn't really spend big money and stuff on wide receivers. He thinks he can find them as undrafted guys, as he's under the radar guys. So I think Sean Payton looks at the receiver room and says, I don't need the 3rd highest paid receiver room. Give me my guy, Marvin Mims, and then I can work with the Marquez Callaways of the world. He builds his receiver room different, and he has so much success because of his scheme, not because of saying, okay, I'm just going to get the most talented guys. He believes in himself. I think you guys are just underselling Sean Payton's, how he views the wide receiver room. I think it's different than just spending a ton of money on it.
My take has nothing really to do with Sean Payton. It just has everything to do with...
But it should have stuff to do with Sean Payton. No, he's leading this.
It has everything to do with there's no point in trying to get rid of one of these guys now other than money, when he would definitely rather have talent than money.
And I think, again, I think I would swap the Broncos receiver room for 15 others in the league, maybe even more than that. Like, that's just not a situation that you can be taking players away from.
15 others, I think it is. Especially, you're not going to be lining up 4 wide. I don't think all that often. And if you are, throw Greg Dulcich in there.
Sean Payton kind of likes 4 wide.
There's plenty. I think there's plenty of touches to go around for 4. If you have 4 DeAndre Hopkinses, then no.
I'm
but
less
with
worried about using 4 wide receivers than I am about making sure 3 of them are top 3 wide receivers. And I would rather have 4 guys with the chance to be a top 3.
If Tim Patrick needs to take a decreased role because everybody else is living up to the hype, that's a great situation to be in. Then at the deadline, you say, hey, we've got this guy. Anybody want to give us a 6th? And then, because what? Then if it's $6 million you save, that by moving him now, you would save $4 million at that point. A little more than half. If it's $10 million, then you'd save 6 or so. Like,
and then you're also saving all the money in 2024 as well.
I think in addition, I had just assumed that you get rid of one after this year. So that'd be like the marginal gain over getting rid of one after.
You save $4 million for a guy that's sitting on the bench, plus you get a 6th round pick back. We're just going to have to agree to disagree, and that's okay. And we're going to see where this goes. But one thing we can all agree on, our friends over at FOCO, this set is awesome, rocking with so much FOCO stuff. You can see it all around me. Above my head, we got some bobbleheads, got some pennants behind me. We got some things on this table like the Broncos helmet. You can get so much of that stuff over at FOCO. So check them out at FOCO. Use that code DNVR to get 10% off. If you're listening on the podcast and you can't hear it, it's FOCO. And you go there and you get so many cool things. And what a great place to get gifts for people, especially anyone sports fan. You can get so much. So check them out. FOCO. Use that code DNVR to get 10% off.
If you're arguing with one of your friends about whether or not the Broncos should trade a wide receiver or not, and then they sucker punch you,
whoa,
gotta call back Sinchenko.
Wow. That's true.
Gotta call back Sinchenko and say, hey, look, I need help. I need to sue my friend
Wow.
because he punched me in the face over a Broncos trade argument.
I wonder how much damage a Zach punch would do.
You want to find out?
No.
'Cause I feel like you're.
Well, wait.
You're,
Well, I don't know. It's just like a good thought experiment, you know? I mean, I've never been punched. Actually,
the way you
I did
said
get punched
it
once.
was kind of seemed disrespectful.
Yep,
I
I
don't
want to
know.
see it now.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think that that's like massive money.
Wow.
Well,
that's what back-
Henry
I don't
wants
think
to get
you're not
punched.
getting a new car out of it. You're not getting a new car out of it.
He's trying
Now you're
to
underestimating.
sue me.
Now
Used
you're
car.
underestimating Zach and Baxenschenker.
It's true. It's
Wow,
very
that
true.
is true.
He's going to
Yeah.
do damage,
Yeah.
and then
Thank you,
Baxenschenker is going
Ryan.
to
That is true.
maximize the money that you would get out of that.
That is true.
The best part about Baxenschenker is you won't have to pay them until they win your case. So really, you'll just be paying them with Zach's money.
So true.
It's right. It's right.
So true.
It's a good deal. So hit up our friends over at Baxenschenker. If you need to sue, smash the 222-2222.
There we go. All right. Shall we hop into some questions?
Yes. We should.
Do we have any super chats?
Not
Nope.
today.
Wow.
No super chats
I
today.
will say, elite commenter, go back to the top. Linda Clark always just comments, Linda Clark.
That's so sick.
Linda Clark,
That's
love
so
it.
sick.
I love it.
Shout out, Linda.
Just checking in, Linda. We love to hear it. Okay, so let's hit some comments on the website. The Chad says, now that we are through free agency and the draft and most of the offseason moves have been made, what would your projection be for this team if we didn't consider Russ's performance last year and viewed him the same rose-colored glasses we did last year when we traded for him? So pretend we acquired Russ this offseason and the only information we had on him was from his time in Seattle.
The tough part is you have to factor in, like, I would probably think Courtland Sutton is like a fringe Pro Bowl player too, because we didn't see him put up those numbers. Like, because there's different ways you could do it. Like, you could just erase last year entirely. You could say Russ played like that last year. In that case, Courtland Sutton is better. So it's really hard to separate all those things out. Like, the run game would have looked better. The offensive line would have looked better. All that stuff. So I don't know. I'm probably going to undersell this, but I don't know. I said 10 wins before last season. I think they got better with these receivers. Offensive line, give me 12 wins.
Yeah, I think it would be, man, it's so hard to take a step
It is.
back. I'd have to go at least 11 wins just with the combo of Russ and Sean Payton. I mean, yeah, you're probably talking about maybe 12-5
Yeah.
with this team because what you're talking about with Russ is 25 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, and that was a down year for him. That's what he was coming off of, and people said it was a down year nationally. So you would just feel so good about him pairing up with Sean Payton. You're going 11-12 wins.
Yeah, you would have to pour bleach on my brain to
Yep.
get rid of all of those memories, and that would kill me, so I wouldn't be able to make this prediction.
That's
Baxter
tough.
Shanker? If someone else poured bleach on your brain?
Well, I wouldn't be able to call back.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I would be extreme. I don't know. As high as you could possibly be on the team
Yeah.
is where I would
I
be.
might even be going like 13, 14.
So would you be saying that in that case, you would be saying they'd be competing with the Chiefs for the division?
Oh, yeah. Because again, like, I remember people were pissed, and I've said this many times, people were pissed at me for saying they're only going to win 10 games last year. But, like, that's where I was at. Replace Nathaniel Hackett with Sean Payton. All of a sudden, like, my doubts are just gone. Like, in that world, I would minimum be saying they're going to win 12 games. I'm probably saying 13.
Yeah.
Man.
And at this point, I would say that is very wrong. But hopefully I'm wrong saying that.
I think we've definitely come down a little bit from that. Now, next one from Vatsky says, have you all noticed how the Broncos under Sean Payton are slowly becoming more culturally diverse in a widely believed less athletic fashion? Stidham, Powers, McGlinchey, Zach Allen, Singleton, Troutman, and as my brother said, Riley Moss, the only white corner since Jason Sehorn.
Wow. Interesting question. Have you noticed the Broncos are getting whiter?
Wow.
Wow. Everyone he mentioned.
That was
Yeah.
his point.
Yeah.
In
I
a
don't
widely believed less athletic fashion.
I don't think I had noticed.
I had not noticed. No.
I had not noticed.
I mean,
don't-
obviously, Riley Moss stood out.
Riley Moss was a sore
That one
thumb.
caught me.
Stood out so much that was actually a question asked in the press conference where Sean Payton interrupted the question and said, "Are you talking about white cornerbacks here?"
Yeah.
Like, so the situation, is kind of unique, I guess you could say. Yeah. But it's one of those things where it's like everybody's thinking it. Everybody sees Riley Moss and is like, wait, haven't seen that in a while. But there isn't really a question. Like, the only questions you could ask are like, is Riley Moss white? It's like, or this is weird, right? Or like,
Yeah.
there isn't really a question there. It's just a thing that's different.
I mean, I guess the question would have been like,
Are you concerned that he's white?
Right. Like
It would be
that's
what,
I was trying to think, like,
gives you confidence that he can
Yeah.
break the trend.
Did Riley Moss being white factor into your evaluation at all? Like, there's no normal way to ask that question.
Yeah, I could kind of guess at the answer to that one too.
Yeah.
I have a feeling the answer would be
No.
No.
Rob says, my boys, on the off-season topics of pet names, my dog has the best name. Her name is Derek. Derek is an unremarkable name on its
Her
own.
name is Derek.
Her name is Derek. Derek is that's what it says. Derek is an unremarkable name on its own, but when it's paired with my last name, her name is Derek Herrick. Also, her middle name is Eric. Okay. So we got Derek, Eric, Herrick for a girl dog.
Damn,
That is
man.
pretty good. That's a good name. I would meet that dog.
What drugs do you think he was on?
Oh.
That's something. How many times do you think he introduces Derek to someone and they immediately call the dog him?
Every time.
Yeah,
I got that with Tebow.
Oh yeah.
Whereas like Tebow is a surname. Like
Right.
there's what's his mom's name? Kim? There's Kim Tebow too. I get that everybody talks about. No, I think I'm just thinking Kim because of Tim.
Probably.
I mean, that's a fair point.
But the point,
Karen?
exactly.
You're right.
It's-
You're right.
It's gender neutral.
'Cause
You
I've-
just only heard of one of them.
Yeah, but
Except
not
for that
Derek.
ad
Derek
campaign.
is a first name.
Yeah, no,
So
Derek.
that would be leading people to believe it's a
absolutely.
That's
If I was getting it, he's definitely getting it.
final one here from the count who says over under on starters by next season that the visor nabbed in this draft. Love the count. So next season, does that mean not this upcoming season?
male. Okay, let's go 2024.
Mims.
Mims.
2.
Sanders, yeah.
Sanders, yep. I'm not going Riley Moss right now.
Oh, I'll go Moss.
I'll go Mathis over Moss.
Me too. And then you got JT or JL Skinner.
I'll go Stearns over Skinner. But it is close. I think both those are kind of
Man.
50-50 battles.
I'll go between the 2 day 3 picks. I'm going to go one of them. So I'm going to go 3.
Okay.
I'm going to go 3 day 1 starters in 2024.
Yeah.
That feels ridiculous to do. Of a 5-man
Forsyth
class
is a nice little
where your
tiebreaker.
first pick, though, was pick 63. If they get 3 day 1 starters out of this class, they killed it.
Also,
Credit to the Paytons if that's the case.
since JL Skinner came up, like I said this morning, I had like this weird JL Skinner deep dive. He is so sick. When he was a kid, he had like a go-to surgeon, like an orthopedic surgeon who was like his guy because he would just like break so many bones, which I know sounds like a bad thing, but it's like he would just go play like a football game when he was 6. There's one story where it's like he just snapped his arm, played for another hour until
my
like he just
gosh.
couldn't stop crying whenever somebody touched him. Went home, was like, "Mom, I think I broke my arm." And she was like, "Oh, time to go up Dr. Frost or whatever," because I was just like his guy. But all that stuff just kept happening because he was so tough and he kept hurting himself.
Dang.
Wow.
There's like, I went back and watched his
So different from me.
like his.
We're going to be able to dive into him.
I know.
We're going to be able to dive in.
His high school tape though is so sick. When they play him at Wildcat quarterback, like nobody can stop him.
Yeah. I
So
can imagine
6'4",
that.
over 200
the
pounds.
toughness
it's
stands
awesome.
out so much. Like maybe an underrated trait.
Toughness?
You just like assume an NFL football
think so.
player is
Yeah.
tough, but there's a difference.
Yeah.
Oh, there's definitely a difference.
Yeah.
He's freaky tough.
I don't think it's underrated.
Maybe not in NFL front offices,
Okay.
but I think maybe by
Mm-hmm.
fans, like they're not looking at like toughness when they're like trying to grade a guy.
Evaluating someone coming out of college, sure.
Yeah. Like I won't put him on blast, but there was a certain player that I covered at CU who like would just say he was hurt in every practice so that he didn't have to finish practice.
Wow. Not very tough.
No, and he went to the NFL and he was actually like really good on game days.
Wow.
But it's just like can't have a guy like that.
No, that's tough. That's
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah.
Or
that
it's
is-
not tough.
Yeah.
It's not tough.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's all we got for today.
Yeah, that's it.
All right,
Yeah.
appreciate you guys for tuning in. We will talk to you soon.